Today we're talking about commanders that make you feel like this.
What? It's just an ordinary crabby. Oh my goodness!
I'm Mia, and I'm playing Whiteout Survival, not sponsored.
I'm BZ. I just got 10,000 trophies in Clash Royale, also not sponsored. We're the Nitpicking Nerds, sponsored by Card Kingdom. They have everything you can need for Magic the Gathering, accessories, supplies, cards, doubles, triples, singles, all of that. And they won't hit you with microtransactions like a random mobile game will.
All the cards on this list will be available at cardkingdom.com. Use our link in the description. Tell them we sent you. We love you for it. We're also sponsored by Dragon Shield, best sleeves in the multiverse.
Good sleeves.
If you use the code
Nerds.
at checkout, you can save 5% of your real money tax dollar on the entire order, which includes these new art sleeves and matching mats right here. I love the fish one.
Also have to shout out our patrons because they're here every episode. You guys are backing us up. You guys are giving to the channel directly. And you guys help make all these improvements and weird stuff. And if you ever see us doing something really cool and goofy and out there, it's because of Patreon. So if you want to make more of that stuff happen, head over there. But we've got some commanders to talk about. 7 to be exact. These are commanders that no one sees coming. We're going to talk about what exactly that means. Hopefully the SpongeBob meme really helped clear things up at the beginning. But I think these are commanders that are unexpected. Your first time playing against them, you might not get what you think you're going to get based on the reading of the card at first. And they're just going to pack a serious punch that is not obvious.
I think a lot of these commanders are very deceptive. You're like, oh, I get it. This is this because of this color identity, or I get this because I've seen it a lot. And then no, you haven't. These just come in really, really fast, hit you really hard, and leave you like, what happened?
Yeah, so we're going to start out with the first one. It's a Universes Beyond card. It's Indoraptor, the perfect hybrid. 1 and a black-green hybrid. Red for a 3/1. It has Bloodthirst X. Now this is what's crazy about this card because it means this creature enters with X +1/+1 counters on it, where X is the damage dealt to your opponents this turn. That is not anything you have to pay any extra mana for. It has Menace and has Enrage. When it's dealt damage, choose an opponent at random. Indoraptor deals damage to its power to that player unless they sacrifice a non-token creature of their choice. A couple things going on here. Number one, I think at first glance, you are not ready for the number of Bloodthirst counters that this thing is going to enter with. Second glance, I'm not super scared of that range ability at first read because A, it's an opponent at random, and B, sacrificing a non-token creature is like pretty notoriously easy. So I'm not, even if they get their Indoraptor to like a 10/10, I'm not going to take 10. I'll just sacrifice a non-token creature.
I think this is so scary because there are so many ways, like the first card that we're going to talk about, that says each opponent. And when it says each opponent, since we have so many, it's going to come down so cheaply. Indoraptor is going to become gigantic. The first one we talk about is Flame Rift, 1 in red for a sorcery. It deals 4 damage to each player. Usually taking 1/10 of each player's life is like not that big of a deal, especially not what you want to waste a card for. But with this equals 12 counters on Indoraptor. That's going to be so big so fast.
So turn 4 or turn 5, whenever you have 5 mana available, you go Flame Rift, Indoraptor, because it's only 3 mana, and you just have a 15/13 with Menace? That's it? That's all you did?
And then you're going to be able to, if you damage it at all, because it's not exactly wimpy at this point, if you damage it at all with it through combat or fight spells or anything else, it's going to make your opponents either sack a creature, a non-token creature, or just deal that much damage to it. It's gigantic.
Yeah, so there's definitely versions of the deck that just play a bunch of burn spells like Flame Rift, Bolt Wave was another one, and they just want to go like, boom, zap you, play my commander. But there's also on-board continuous burn that you don't have to pay mana for, so that even if your first Indoraptor dies, you don't have to spend all this mana just to get the second one out with counters. So like Descent of Avernus, it's 2 and a red for an enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, put 2 Descent counters on this enchantment. Then each player creates X treasures, and this enchantment deals X damage to each player, where X is the number of Descent counters on it. So it first goes off 2, then it goes to 4, 6. Couple things with this card. First off, it's insane. It makes the game go into big old turbo mode. But I think this is one of those decks that can take super perfect advantage of it because we're going to play a 20/20 after this thing's dealing, 4 or 6 damage, and then we're going to get the game over with way before anyone else can.
I think this is a really good one in this deck because not only does it count for that damage that you really want to do to each opponent, you're able to take advantage of those treasures faster because if you can, for instance, you're damaging the opponents, you have another opponent damage spell or something like that, and then you can play Indoraptor with the treasures that you're making from this. You can have these explosive, gigantic turns damage everyone, which, of course, versus your opponents, the longer this stays out, and then Indoraptor is going to be even bigger. That is crazy. Whether you're doing something like, swinging in with creatures or making this unblockable, or you're even just flinging it at someone.
Yeah, well, your deck's going to want ways to enrage Indoraptor. I guess the checklist for this deck is you're going to want to deal a bunch of damage to your opponents in some way, get Indoraptor on the field, but now you want to trigger the enrage, and you also kind of want to make it so they don't have non-token creatures to sack. Because if they have to sack their stupid Llanowar Elves, that doesn't do you any good. You want to hit them for 21 or whatever, because that's what your commander is. And that's an important part, I think, of Descent into Avernus, which I can't say the name of, apparently. Once it hits 6, you're dealing 18 damage total, which means Indoraptor is a 21 power. So if you give it haste and you can get through on someone, they're instantly dead. And of course, 2 hits of 21 with the enrage ability is enough to kill any other player. So you're kind of like in the sweet spot there. And that can be, I think, where most games are going to end with Descent into Avernus.
This is so crazy, too, because when you think of burn, you usually think of like mono red. But when you're in this Jund color pie, not only are you able to ramp really fast and you have the ability to kill a bunch of stuff, you also just have the burn stapled on. I feel like this is the perfect color wedge for this. But even if it was like mono red, I still think it would have a good home in there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because the fallback of, I took out a couple players, I got people's life totals low, and my Indoraptor is uncastable because they're respecting it and answering it the way it needs to be answered. Okay, I have a bunch of burn in my deck.
Yeah.
Good luck. A Slagstorm is perfect. It checks off so many of those boxes I was alluding to. 1 red sorcery. You choose 1. It deals 3 to each creature, or it deals 3 to each player. 3 to each player is a great way to fuel the Bloodthirst X if you don't have Indoraptor in play. But if you do, not only is it going to trigger Enrage, but it's clearing out every stupid small creature that would get in the way of you getting serious value off of the Enrage ability. It's perfect.
I think it's super interesting to note, too, that deals 3 to each creature, which is so cool because you're going to be able to hit Indoraptor with that too.
It clears out everything.
Yeah, clearing out everything, the small guys, and then dealing all that damage to another opponent while still keeping him on the field, because that's not going to kill him. We're never going to let 3 damage kill him.
Come on now, we got better toughness than that.
Another great way to have removal in your deck and also deal damage to Indoraptor is a card like Tailswipe, green for an instant. Choose target creature you control and target creature you don't control. If you cast a spell during main phase, the creature you control gets +1/+1 until end of turn. Then they fight each other. This is going to be an awesome way to take out those pesky little creatures. Maybe make Indoraptor big if you cast it on your main spell, and then also deal damage, which means they'll also have to sack a non-token creature or get just like domed in the face.
Yeah, the more players and opponents you have that have no creatures in play, the better, because that means Indoraptor is going to hit them and they have no choice in the matter. They're probably going to die. And Tailswipe can take out the only creature somebody controls, or just use it as a giant removal spell, like a 1-mana murder, basically, that also triggers. And, even if we're not hitting somebody for 20 with the non-combat damage, we could still take out the best creature in play and force somebody else at random to sacrifice a non-token creature. So Tailswipe, definitely one different avenue. You probably could play it, but I think some of these decks want to choose, hey, do I want like all burn spells? Do I want all onboard stuff? Do I want what do I want all fight spells? There's a lot of different ways to take it.
Yeah, I think with Tailswipe, you're relying a little bit more heavily on Indoraptor staying alive, which is a little bit more all in. But if you really love Jurassic Park, or if you like building those all or nothing decks, this can be an awesome way to do it. I also like the fact that it's instant speed too.
Instant speed is nice. Not many fight spells that are 1 mana are instant speeds. Next is a card that you will absolutely get annihilated by if you are not aware of just how big Indoraptor can get. They're going to play Selvala, Heart of the Wilds, on turn 3 or 4, and then they're going to follow that up with Indoraptor. And she says, 1 green, 2/3. Whenever another creature enters, its controller may draw a card if it has the biggest power on the field, and you pay green and tap her to add X mana in any combination of colors, where X is the greatest power among creatures you control. And we just talked about how easy it is to get Indoraptor up to 15, 16, 18, 20, and that means you make 20-something mana. And at that point, legitimately, I'm not kidding, if you get up to an 18 power creature with Selvala and you have this many enrage enablers, ways to deal damage to Indoraptor in your deck, the game's actually over. They're only going to have 2 to 3 creatures max in play, and you're going to wipe them off the field, and then you're going to kill everybody with non-combat damage, plus possibly just giving Indoraptor haste.
We put Indoraptor on this list because of the fact that it snowballs so quickly. It's not that uncommon to go Selvala into, Indoraptor for gigantic amounts of damage. I feel like you could do that by turn 4 or 5 very, very easily because of the cheap mana costs of both of these. The only thing that we'll have to worry about is that you will not be able to get any more cards off Selvala for the most part once Indoraptor comes in, because it will easily be the biggest thing on the field.
Yeah, you'll have to settle for like 25 mana off of it. And I think one other thing that's underappreciated on Indoraptor is just menace. the fact that you're pinging off non-token creatures from people means that now if you only have one creature in play, you're going to die to my 21 power menace commander, and I don't have to worry about you, and it sort of cuts you out of the RNG for deciding who else is going to get hit from the enrage ability.
Yeah, I like this a lot too because I feel like with Jund, there are so many commanders that say sack your own creature, do XYZ. And this says sacrifice on it. I know. But it's not the typical sacrifice route that we're going. I feel like it just is tacked on and it's just big stompies plus and not just, sack your own thing, do XYZ.
Now, when you're bumbling around and you're going off with your giant power creature, I could say any number of things like, Rishkar's expertise, draw a bunch of cards. It's really, really cool. But let's just twist it a little bit. New card came out. I want to talk about it. Terra Symbiosis. It's 2 and a green for an enchantment. And whenever you put one or more counters on a creature you control, you can draw that many cards, but only once each turn. This is just a funny, different card to talk about versus like every other power payoff. You can play all of them, but this one is very funny when you put 18 counters on Indoraptor, then you just draw that many.
I mean, it's awesome too because Indoraptor is going to be a huge high value target. You're going to be able to cast it over and over because
people are killing it.
Yeah, people are going to be killing it. You're going to need to cast it over and over. This is going to give you more than that one-time card burst that you're going to get from things like, what's it called? Return.
Yeah, Rishkar's. This could potentially just sit and play and draw you 15 cards twice.
Yeah, this is not going to be the thing that they kill when they have to save their removal for Indoraptor or if they're going to die to things like Descent into Avernus. You know what I mean?
Right. Plus, if you have other counter stuff in your deck, then now we're really talking, and you can definitely play that over some of the other ones. But I saved the best for last because this is a classic Enrage card. And it's genuinely the most unbeatable thing I can imagine from Indoraptor, especially when they put out 20 mana with Selvala. It's Pyrohemia. It's 2 red for an enchantment. At the beginning of the end step, which triggers every end step, if no creatures are in play, you sacrifice this enchantment, but you can pay red to deal 1 to each creature and each player. So first of all, if Indoraptor's not in play, every red mana will give you 3 damage across your opponents for Bloodthirst shenanigans. But if it is in play, you are clearing the board, and every red is triggering the enrage off of Indoraptor. Your opponents are going to die a lightning fast, like a comical rate. They're going to be just dead after you spend 5 red mana.
And you're going to be able to sweep the board of all their stuff, so they will have to take all of that damage because they just won't have creatures that stick around that long.
Yeah, this genuinely, I think you don't play Pyrohemia, randomly on turn 4. I think you wait until you have 7 mana, ping, 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 and the game just ends. Seriously, Pyrohemia plus Indoraptor. Yeah, I don't remember the end of that one Jurassic World movie with the Indoraptor in it, but I'm pretty sure he attempted to cast Pyrohemia, and he was stopped because the protagonist used Moxville.com, and they know, hey, Pyrohemia, that's a borderline game changer in some of these dinosaur decks. I'm going to counterspell it because I know which decks my counterspells are in, and I can tutor for it.
Moxville.com is the best place online to be building and sharing decks and following your favorite brewers, which might include us. If you want to see any of our decks on Moxfield, you should go to our description, link profile, you know what's up, and look at every deck that we've ever played on Deckmasters, any deck we've ever built or retired, all on our profile.
What do you think? Was that a good segue on my part?
6 out of 10.
6 out of 10, not bad, just like that movie. Next up is a partner pairing. If you haven't played against it, you don't know. But if you do know, then you have played against it. It's Halden and Paco. Halden, Avid Arcanist, is 2 and a blue for a 1/4. He has partner with Paco, but that's not relevant if they're both in your command zone. You can play lands and cast non-creature spells from among cards you exiled that have fetch counters on them. And you may spend mana as though it were mana of any color to cast those spells. Now, stay with me, because we have to read Paco, Arcane Retriever as well. It is partnered with Halden, obviously, and is 3 green red for a 3/3 haste. Whenever Paco attacks, exile the top card of each player's library and put a fetch counter on them. It's coming together. Put a +1/+1 counter on Paco for each non-creature card exiled this way. Oh my god. This looked like, oh, it's Shaggy and Scooby or something, or, oh, look at this Ikoria guy with his dog. It's like, no, you're dead. You're going to get the crap beaten out of you no matter what. Paco is a mean dog.
This is so scary. With Halden, he, in the sweatiest versions of this deck, is just there for colors and because it's free. Paco does all the heavy lifting, but if you want to go a more mid-rangey, lax, casting their stuff, casting other people's stuff, it is very easy to turn that into Halden, Paco, okay, hit people for gigantic amounts of commander damage, cast their stuff, play their lands, etc., etc. There are so many ways you can take this, and every single time, Paco hits like a truck.
Yeah, it's a little deceiving what Paco says, because he says it gets a counter for each non-creature card. That means lands. Usually lands are bricks. I know from experience with the Tallies. You're like, oh, I don't want to hit a land. But lands here at least put counters on Paco, and also you can play them off of Halden because you can play cards exile with fetch counter. So there's just a lot happening. You were getting so much card advantage that it means all you have to do with your deck is just cast Paco as early as possible, and he'll do the rest. Halden teams up with him. Halden has almost no text, but once he's out, now all those cards are yours, and you can use them to protect, to go on offense, take other people's removal, and use it to clear the way for Paco, and it just means you're snowballing. This is the snowballiest deck ever.
Like, it doesn't look like this is going to be a commander damage type deck, but it turns into that so quickly. I also think it's super weird when it's like, it says non-creature. Even if you have a very creature-heavy deck, I'm thinking 40, 45 creatures, still the majority of your deck is non-creatures, which means you'll have a majority hit to put counters on Paco.
Yeah, I think, like you said, even though this is a commander damage matters deck, I think it looks more like a cast my opponent's spells deck.
It's deceiving.
You know, like a Jaleva, Nefalia's Scourge, right? One of those. But this is like 21 commander damage. Get ready. I'm going to showcase a weird card, Tinderwall. This is a card we don't talk about a lot on the channel, but it actually is a very good Magic card, and it's good for powering out stuff, especially stuff that gives you card advantage as soon as you play it. So this is a green for a 0/3 defender, and you can sack it to add red, and you can pay red and sack it to deal 2 damage to a creature that it's blocking. Not relevant. It's basically a ritual on a little creature body. I think more decks should play this, but it is restricted to green-red decks. But for this deck, oh yeah, this means turn 1, Tinderwall, turn 2, land, and then you can go turn 3, sack Tinderwall, play Paco just with playing Tinderwall on turn 1.
It's so nasty. Tinderwall is awesome, and I agree with you. I feel like we don't see this enough, and even we don't play it enough. But
no, we don't.
I
We should.
I feel like we don't have too many homes for it. If you can, throw this into your deck, especially if you're trying to power out things as quickly as possible, like a turn 3 Paco.
Yeah, it's a nice little ritual. And I want to also talk about Doc Orlock, a card we don't get to talk about ever. Grizzled Genius, blue-green for a 2/3. Spells you cast from your graveyard or from exile cost 2 less to cast, and plotting costs 2 less as well. Why not? Thanks, Doc Orlock. But now we're going to take this big batch of cards. Paco gives us, I don't know, 2 to 4 every single time, and start just casting them all for like 1 or 2 pips, putting them on our side, and even if Paco dies, we have an army of everything random that our opponents just gave us.
I feel like Doc got overlooked in, what was it, Thunder Junction?
There's so much. He was
Yeah,
uncommon.
just because, like, people plotting was not particularly fancy or spicy, and just graveyard stuff, blue-green usually isn't in the graveyard color pie, but that exile is going to make our stuff be so cheap. We're going to be churning lands off the top. We're going to be casting spells if you're going that route with Halden and Paco, and I think it's a very valid route with this deck to go.
Yeah, even if you go the I'm going to cast as many spells from you as possible route, Paco's going to be a 20/20 before you know it, 21/21 before you know it. So Doc Orlock is a sweet little storm enabler for that. Also, on a similar side, Azusa, Lost But Seeking, 2 and a green, 1/2. You can play 2 extra lands on each of your turns. Since Halden says you can play cards, that includes lands, now this is a very real engine for you playing 3 lands a turn, every turn without question, which lets you play more of the fetch cards.
Just churning out spells left and right, and then you have this gigantic Paco to deal with too. And no one's going to be pointing the removal at Halden when Paco's trying to just kick them in the teeth every turn, too.
Yeah, you have to kill Paco or you're going to, be in immediate danger. And one thing about Azusa that I love, and even Doc Orlock, is when you play all these mana rocks and ramp spells and lands from other people, that gives you the mana that you'll inevitably need to recast Paco because he's a huge threat. Of course, you're red and you're blue, so you have redirects. You're also green, so you have redirects, Tameo Safekeepings, all this stuff in your deck to prevent that, counter spells. But he's going to die a couple times, and Azusa gives you like so much mana to spend, and you don't even have to worry about replaying him.
I also like free or very discounted things when you cast them from exile, like things like Submerge, 4 and a blue for an instant. If an opponent controls a forest and you control an island, you can cast it without paying its mana cost. Put target creature on top of its owner's library. This can be really good if they try and sneak out something to block Paco and try and kill him, something with like Death Touch, for instance. Or just, it can sit in exile and you can cast it for free at a later point.
I just think this card is extremely powerful, and I'm going to look for any excuse to play it. One excuse being, if you're in blue-green, Yavimaya will force opponents to have forests, even if they don't already, which I think is, as someone who's played Submerge dozens of times, it's very, very rare that you won't be able to cast it for free, which just makes it, I think, like the blue swords to plowshares is what I've like been jokingly call it. But another fun thing about Submerge in this deck specifically, normally it puts it on top. Well, guess what? That's exactly where I want it with Paco. I know I can't play it once it gets exiled, but I can exile it forever, and that is hilarious.
Exiling it is just that really does just make it the blue swords to plowshares at that point, with a lot of extra work.
Right,
though.
you're not clickbaiting at that point. If you go blue swords, attack with Paco, they'll be like, what? Oh.
But we're going to be swinging in with Paco every single chance we get, so we want things to make him unblockable, like Aqueous Form, blue and for enchantment. You enchant Paco, of course. It can't be blocked, and when it attacks, you scry 1. So if you want to put something a little extra juicy on the top so you can flip it and play it later, that will be a great way to do it.
Yeah, it's a nice little bonus. It does have some synergy. I was wondering why this card saw this much play, because anything like Rancor or some various things that give Paco trample or evasion are equally as good, but I think people just can't resist that sweet, sweet scry. Oh, it's a card, like it's a creature. I'll bottom it so that Paco gets a counter and I can play the card.
Normally we hate swords, but Sword of Feast and Famine is the best sword, and it's going to be great in here. 3 mana for equipment. Equipped creature Paco gets 2/2 and has protection from black and green. When it deals combat damage to a player, that player discards a card and you untap all lands you control. It has equipped 2, but you're going to be needing all of that mana to be casting all of the spells you get from him for free.
What a great outlet. We also have Passionate Archaeologist in here. 1 in a red for an enchantment. Commander creatures you own have, whenever you cast a spell from exile, this creature deals damage equal to that spell's mana value to target opponent. So it's a nice little backup in case you can't get through with Paco, or in case you really just want to have a little more synergy and feel less like a Voltron beatdown deck. This says when you just sling all those spells with Doc Warlock and Azusa, now they're pinging. But the best part about Archaeologist is that it says each commander gains that ability, and we have 2, Halden and Paco. Halden's going to pull a little bit more weight, and if we cast a 4-drop from exile, we deal 4 damage to target opponent and 4 damage to a different target opponent or the same one. That's going to help really close out games. Maybe what happens with this deck is you're going to target one person with the commander damage. Sorry, that's how it goes. Them's the breaks. And then shoot the other 2 people with non-combat stuff.
Passionate Archaeologist is always the one you have to fire some removal off of. And what a dangerous card. Up next is a commander that I didn't think would be that spicy, because when you think of 2/2s, you usually think of things like Kudo, but Descana, the Rage Mother, has put in some serious work. 2 red, white, green for a 5/5. When it enters, you draw a card for each creature you control with base power and toughness 2/2. Whenever a creature you control with base power and toughness 2/2 attacks, it gets +3/+3 until end of turn. That makes all of your 2/2s 5/5s? That's gigantic. That is basically just a free static buff that's going to be staying on for the entirety of your combat phase, and that starts to add up very quickly.
Yeah, this effect basically has haste, because I don't need to attack with Descana ever. I'm just going to wait until I have a bunch of 2/2s, play it, draw a bunch of cards, feel great about my life, even if Descana dies at that point. And now, as soon as I play it, I send all my 2/2s in and they're 5/5s. And this is where I think, I don't know, first of all, does anyone even remember this card?
I mean,
what set was this from? Like Murders, I think?
This was from wherever Kudo was from, right? Because that was Bear set, right?
Kudos was MH3.
Was this also MH3? No. This was Murders. This was Murders because it was in that it was in the flip deck or whatever, right? It was the alt commander of the Katzel or whatever.
Right, yeah, but everybody was like thinking about Voja, and this wasn't the face commander, so just nobody has ever played against this, and I'm here to tell you, you will get rocked if you underestimate this card. We're looking at normal stuff like Goblin and Necromancer, just a green-red 2/2 that makes your stuff cheaper. Fantastic card, staple, but we get to play cards like this, and the fact that they're 2/2s, coincidentally, is going to mean Descana pays us off later for him. We cast it sooner with Goblin and Necromancer, and then now my Necromancer is beating for 5 on a key turn.
Scooz is also going to be another key 2/2 in here that says 1 in a green to exile target card from a graveyard. If it's a creature card, you put a 1/1 counter on this creature and you gain 1 life. It's really awesome in here too, because even though it grows bigger, its base power and toughness is 2/2. So it's going to be bare minimum 5/5 when it swings, but with all the counters on it, it can be gigantic. I've been afraid of Scooz before, but usually I'm in a graveyard deck, never usually beating to the face.
Bare minimum? Bare
Got
minimum?
him.
This doesn't have to be a bear deck. It just says, it wants bears. I think this is a nice little lesson in base power toughness. You can put equipment, you can augment their power in any way. Even Descana, when it gives +3/+3, it still is base power toughness 2/2. So let's look at that with Kutzil, Malamute Exemplar. 1 white green for a 3/3. Your opponents can't cast spells during your turn, which is extremely relevant when your commander is that good. And whenever one or more creatures you control with power greater than its base power deals combat damage to a player, you draw a card. So you have a blank check for the combat. You know they can't do anything about it. You can attack with all of your 2/2s that become 5/5s. Descana's doing work. And every time you hit with one of those 2/2s, as long as it's only a maximum of 1 per opponent that hits, you draw a card.
You're going to have to worry about keeping all of the cards in your library because at this point, you're drawing so many with Descana. You're going to be drawing so many in combat. At that point, I might be worried about milling out because I'm never drawing this many cards. And now I just have this many in my hands.
Don't worry. Your opponents won't make that long.
Yeah, they won't. They're really going to die really quickly. But we want some 2/2s, right? So how will we make some with Feldar Retreat? 3 and a white for an enchantment. When a land you control enters, you either create a 2/2 cat, whatever. It's not a bear, but we'll deal. Or you could put a 1/1 counter on each creature you control and they gain vigilance until end of turn. I like the fact that this has 2 modes, the making 2/2s modes. So when you start revving up your game plan and then giving everything vigilance and extra stats so they'll become gigantic blockers and even bigger attackers, that is awesome.
Yeah, giving stats while not, hurting our base power, toughness matters with Descana, and I think it's going to be relevant because you are the person throwing the beatdowns with this deck much more quickly than your opponents are ready for. Even if you just go like 2 mana 2/2, 3 mana 2/2, 4 mana 2/2 on turns 2, 3, and 4, and then you play Descana on turn 5, you're hitting for 15 and you just drew 3 cards. That's crazy. Once your opponents catch on to that, you're going to need some jump blockers. So giving the vigilance is a nice way to have one of those 2/2s that has some counters on it. Stay black on jump black duty.
Also, when Descana is out, it's a 5/5.
Yeah,
it's not exactly like a 2/2. It's not exactly paltry. It is big, and you will have a little bit of defense for that too.
Yeah, one of the other crazy things that you'll realize if you play against a Descana deck and you're not prepared for it is that first ability just says when it enters. You can do that any number of times. It's not if you cast it. So just drop an Ephemerate. They will as soon as you try to kill it. It's white for an instant. Exile a creature you control, then return it to the battlefield under its owner's control. And it has rebound, so you're going to cast it again for free at your next upkeep. So they're going to play Descana. They're going to sequence such that, there's a little extra mana here. What could that be? I don't know. Don't worry about it. Maybe it's a swords. You try to kill it. You try to board wipe. You try to something. And they go response, flicker it, draw 4, 5, 6, who knows how many more cards. And you just feel like a chump, even if, like I said, if they're going to board wipe, I'll still pay a white mana to draw 6.
Yeah, that is a great rate. But since all of Descana's combat abilities are, as I mentioned, in combat, they're in your attack phase, maybe you want to have a couple of attack phases too. Full throttle for red for a sorcery. After this main phase, there are 2 additional combat phases. Begin each combat this turn, untap all creatures that attack this turn. That is going to be swinging in for a ton of damage. Yeah. That's going to add up.
So if we have Descana and, let's say, 3 2/2s, we send each one at one of our opponents at our first combat. That's 5, 5, and 5. Then we play full throttle. We're going to get our first additional combat. They keep the 3/3 because it's still our turn. And Descana's going to say whenever they attack, do it again. So then we're attacking for 8, 8, and 8. And then we get a second combat because that's what full throttle does. And then we hit 11, 11, 11. So that's 23 at each opponent if we start with 3 2/2s.
That is just such a crazy rate. 6 mana better be a game ender or at least close to it, and this is very close to a game ender.
Pairing this stuff with Trample is going to be super crucial for these decks. It's going to mean GG. And one card I liked that I saw that takes a really interesting angle to this deck is Wild Pair. 4 green for an enchantment. Whenever a creature enters, if you cast it from your hand, you may search your library for a creature card with the same total power and toughness and put it onto the battlefield. Well, this is the deck that cares about base stats 2/2s. So if every card in your deck is a 2/2, if you play any creature, you can go tutor for any other creature and put it in play. And that to me is the coolest thing. Maybe it's not bracket 4 level, but I mean, that is pretty sweet. You play Mentor of the Meek and go find Mages of the Moon.
I think that's so funny. And I think that there are so many cheap 2/2s, so you can just kind of chain these. It's like 2/2, find a more expensive one, and then do another 2/2, and then just kind of stack your hand for the next turn, where you're going to also just be putting out more 2/2s and just finding more and just getting all this like cascading value.
Yeah, I mean, I can't remember the name, but there's a 1 mana 2/2 from Edge of Eternities that just, has some downside. Like everyone makes a lander. I think this deck might want random stuff like that. Can you imagine, Descana dies and you go, okay, I have Wild Pair out, play this 1 mana 2/2, go find Karmic Guide. Bring back Descana.
Oh, that's
absolute
good.
Filth. Absolutely love it. But what if that Karmic Guide, it's a little bit curled in your sleeve and you feel bad because everyone can see where it is in your deck?
Well, I think you should be using foil armor, the best place to be uncurling your cards. Place, packet, you know what I mean. They are packets. You put them in your deck box. You close your deck box. You forget about it. You open up your deck box again. They're magically fixed.
By magic, we mean they figured out all the technology required to reduce the humidity or increase the humidity, whatever that card needs, to reach the optimal flatness for a Magic card. So they've saved our cards, and they will save yours too if you go to the link in our description. Jumping on over to a 3-color villain from Final Fantasy, we have Kefka from the intro of the video. Court Mage, 2 blue, black, red for a 4/5. When Kefka enters or attacks, each player discards a card. Then you draw a card for each card type among cards discarded this way. 8: each opponent sacrifices a permanent of their choice. Transform Kefka into Kefka, Ruler of Ruin. He is an avatar wizard that is a 5/7 flyer. Whenever an opponent loses life during your turn, you draw that many cards. So as I go on and I read and I talk about, whoa, wait a minute, Kefka can transform? That's really cool. And he transforms into this big monster. That's a really strong text line. I don't know if you're going to be seeing a ton of Kefka, Ruler of Ruin. I think you're going to be seeing a whole lot more of when Kefka enters or attacks, each player discards a card. And that can be very surprising for someone going up against Kefka for the first time. But get ready for that mode.
Kefka, yeah. I feel like when the transform things happen, you're always like, I'm always working towards that because that's going to be great. And it's very scary, especially since if you wipe the board and stuff, they are forced to sacrifice lands at that point. It doesn't say non-land permanent. It just says permanent. But being able to just enter or attack and just killing their hands, drawing more cards out of it, and then killing their hands again is going to be very unfun for them and very fun for you.
Yeah, you're getting shredded against Kefka. And I have a little bit of a bone to pick. What is with 3-color Grixis transforming villains from other IPs? Why are, like, Green Goblin is Grixis. Nicol Bolas, the Ravager, is from Magic.
I was like, that doesn't count as a different IP. We're in Magic right now.
We keep going through like these 3-color villains that transform, and it feels a little tired at this point. They're all really good, but they're all like kind of their own thing too. Phyrexian Metamorph is one card you might see in this deck. It's still a good deck, even if I'm tired of 3-color Grixis transform villains. It is 3 and a blue Phyrexian hybrid for a 0/0 clone that can also clone artifacts, and it is always an artifact no matter what you clone with it. The key thing here is this is kind of a good stuffy card, but it is a 2-typed permanent. So when you discard it with Kefka, Kefka says, hey, an artifact and a creature were discarded this turn. Isn't that great for you? You're going to draw at least 2 cards.
I feel like you could go a couple ways with this. Some decks want to just keep cloning Kefka, making nasty versions over and over. Or you could just clone anything on their side too. I like the fact that if they have something and they're going a little bit faster than you, maybe they're powering out things with big green stompies, you can go, actually, that's mine now too.
Yeah, Kefka's kind of open-ended, similar to Nicol Bolas the Ravager, where like you could just flicker it a bunch or you could care about discard. One thing I think I'm going to be doing with Kefka is just flickering it infinitely. Displacer Kitten is 3 blue for a 2/2. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you can flicker a non-land permanent and return it to the battlefield under its owner's control. Every time it's Kefka. Every single time you play a 0-mana rock or a 2-mana rock or whatever, or a Gataxian Probe, whatever you have lying around, that's another version of everybody discard a card, and I'm going to go ahead and draw, 2 to 4.
It's so gross. And then you're playing things like Reanimate, black for a sorcery. You put target creature card from any person's graveyard onto the battlefield, and then you lose life equal to that. Well, they're not going to have a hand. They're going to be discarding all of their things that they can't cast now. You play Kefka turn 4 or 5 if you can power him out. And they go, okay, well, this 10-drop really won't be that great for me because I'm a few turns away. Don't worry, it'll be on my side by that time.
Yeah, it works out. This is a perfect card because those are the first cards to go.
Yeah.
The big expensive creature that's a pipe dream that I have in my opener, my Avengers, my Atalis, my Eldrazi, they're gone, and then you can get them back. But I also love that since Kefka's going to be a removal target, because I don't want to have to deal with that as an opponent, I would like to not discard my whole hand. I'm going to shoot that thing with something. You could just reanimate Kefka when the going gets tough and you don't want to pay for commander tags. You just stick them in your graveyard. It's just... There's no part of this that I, as the opponent of the Kefka deck, I go, oh, thank God. This is just all nightmare scenario.
Yeah, and it says when he enters or attacks, not when he's cast. So you're going to be able to reanimate him. You could keep bringing him back to the graveyard, or if you could do this a sack route, keep bringing him back, sack, bring him back. Yeah, or just flicker or whatever. There's so many ways because no matter when Kefka hits the field, no matter how you get it there, it's just nasty either way.
Yeah, and it's hard when you're going to spam Kefka anyway. It's hard not to pay off all that discarding that you're forcing them to do. We know we're already drawing cards with all the different types that we're discarding, so we get a payoff. But let's throw in Waste Not. 1 in a black enchantment. When your opponent discards a card, you're either going to get a zombie, 2 mana, or you're going to draw a card. Whatever that is, the type determines that. And it's perfect because it has a little typing theme. Kefka cares about the types they discard too. Nice. This is the turbo discard payoff because you can chain other discard spells and make them discard more, draw more cards, get more mana. I don't know if Kefka's going to do that a ton, but I think it's hard to pass up when you get 3 triggers almost every single turn.
I think this is going to be one of the best, if not the best card in these Kefka decks.
Yeah.
You're just going to get so much value from it, and you're going to be able to play it really early, and then Kefka's going to come down immediately after. two mana values together aren't even going to be that much. And then you're just going to be profiting all of this mana, cards, and tokens off of it, no matter what they discard. That is so good.
Yeah, you're definitely a villain. And some of these Grixis villain decks do start to blend together because I think a lot of them do have Reanimate, and Waste Not's also good. But we'll throw in a weird one from Bloomborough. It's Bandit's Talent. Card I haven't read on this channel yet. 1 and a black for an enchantment class. When it enters, each opponent discards 2 cards unless they discard a non-land card. That kind of hurts, honestly. You can pay black to level it up, and then at the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, if they have 1 or fewer cards in hand, they lose 2 life. And you can pay 3 to black and level it up again, and now it's going to be pretty sweet. At the beginning of your draw step, draw an additional card for each opponent who has 1 or fewer cards in hand. We're forcing them to discard down. It makes Kefka even more brutal, and if we have mana laying around, we pay it off, and they lose a couple life. The middle mode is the worst, but then we start drawing cards, and now that's cooking.
Classes are tough, in my opinion. I feel like there's so many classes that are just mediocre because their first ability is okay, or it's like too much mana for their first ability, or it's too much mana to level up. But the level up to making them lose 2 life is so cheap in this instance, and the instant discard to just shred their hands.
That's the best part, yeah.
Yeah, the level 3 is kind of whatever, but the first 2, when you have Kefka and you reanimate him or flicker him or whatever you really choose to do, those are going to add up over time.
I almost think the second one is whatever, and I'm kind of excited about the first and the third one. But hey, maybe you're excited about all 3. But one card I think you can't leave home without is Anger, aka Angry Baby. He is 3 in red for a 2/2 haste. If he's in your graveyard and you have a mountain, creatures you control have haste. If he's not in your graveyard, he sucks, and you're upset about it because you want him in your graveyard. So please don't cast this. But Kefka gives you a way to discard it every single time. Normally, when you play cards like Anger, you have to add in some extra discard outlets for yourself, like maybe a Faithless Looting or Rummaging Effects, big score, because you can't afford to have this be dead in your hand, rotting. But Kefka is your commander, so I don't even think you need to play that much extra discard. You're always going to have it. You're always going to do that. And the thing it does is now Kefka has haste. You get a second trigger because when he attacks, you get to do it again. So you're going to go force you to discard, draw 3 cards, attack, force you to discard, draw 2 or 3 cards, deal damage to somebody, maybe flicker him. Who knows? The fun never ends.
The discard in your command zone is so important because it means that you don't need to build in all of these ways into your deck to be like, oh no, what if I can't? Well, you can because you have the blue for interaction. You're going to have ways to flicker it in blue. You're going to be able to bring it back from the graveyard in black. This is a good color suite for this commander, and it's going to be so easy to put Anger into your graveyard.
Yeah, but just for you, maybe Final Fantasy fans who want to flip Kefka, you can totally do that, especially with Waste Not. You get all that extra mana, you can flip them and get that ability. So I wanted to pick at least one card that was good with the backside, and it turns out it's just good in general.
This is one from Aetherdrift. It's Monument to Endurance. 3 mana for an artifact. When you discard a card, you choose one that hasn't been chosen this turn. You either draw a card, create a treasure token, or each opponent loses 3 life. Even on the front side, this is going to be awesome, but on that back one, this is going to turbo out all those modes so quickly. I think that if you just have mana lying around, because this can build up treasures if they have to discard because of their own decks, maybe they're playing some sort of discard theme too, then you're going to be able to build up all these resources, have way more cards than everyone else, so you can pick the best cards to discard for you. And then that 3 life is going to burn them every single time that you can do this on a separate turn. I feel like that is going to add up very quickly.
And then when you use all the treasures to flip Kefka, you get to draw 9 cards. Every time you hit each opponent loses 3 life. Super funny. Maybe that's a little win more, but Kefka feels like a win more kind of guy. I didn't play the games, but he looks like somebody who would want to win more.
I mean, he's the main villain, or at least one of the main villains. I don't know if I want him to win, but if you're playing this deck, I'm sure you want him to win more.
We're rooting for you, don't worry. But this this deck is more of a villain, this next one, than Kefka ever could be, because we always root against Abdel Adrian, Gorian's War. He is 4 and a white for a 4/4. When Abdel Adrian enters, exile any number of other non-land permanents you control until Abdel Adrian leaves the battlefield. Create a 1/1 white soldier for each permanent exiled this way. He has to choose a background, and we are choosing a specific background, but I think this one is what's going to make this deck more underestimated than what you might be thinking of. Normally, I think black-white with Abdel Adrian. We are pairing it with Far Traveler, 2 and a white background. This is a mono white deck. Commander creatures you own have, at the beginning of your end step, exile up to 1 target tapped creature you control, then return it to the battlefield under its owner's control. There's just a lot to unpack with this deck. We've played against, I think, 3 different iterations of this deck, and it was annoying. Surprisingly annoying every time. It was this very hard to interact with blink value soup, and it just got out of hand every time.
I think this is deceiving for a few reasons. One, these two together are very budget. They're both from Baldur's Gate, and I feel like there is a little bit of that, it's not expensive, so it can't be that powerful.
It is.
It is. The second thing being mono white. It's usually not known for its interaction suite, but when all of your stuff is hidden and you're just going to be flickering it, coming back, getting all the ETVs, having all your removal protected, it's surprisingly very tough to snipe the things that you want to snipe.
One other thing about this deck that is maybe not apparent on first read is that you will never be able to attack on the ground ever. There will always be 755 1/1s that you're going to have to address at some point, because that's too many to keep out, but you just have to know that your 6/6 without evasion is not getting in this deck ever. And one thing that is important is Far Traveler is one of the keys to flickering Abdel Adrian every single turn, but you have to have a tap. It has to be tapped, but it's never going to be able to attack because that's too much time to wait. So we're going to play things like Survivor's Encampment, which is a land that taps for a colorless, or you can tap it and an untapped creature you control to make a mana of any color. Super jank, but it ensures that Abdel Adrian is always tapped, so you get that flicker right away, and that is what takes this deck to the next level. Also see Holdout Settlement, Honor-Worn Shaku, Springleaf Drum, all that stuff.
Yeah, I think that is such an important piece of... it's not actual ramp, but it can be a little bit, but it's just that enabling piece that also lets you get a little bit of mana out of it too.
It skips a whole step. It skips waiting. It skips giving it haste. You just go Survivor's Encampment, and what are they going to do? Kill it? It's your land. You're always going to have tapped Abdel as long as you have that Survivor's Encampment.
Yeah, I think that when you say Far Traveler and says, make sure it's tapped, you're like, oh, well, I have a little bit of time because Abdel Adrian is going to have to swing in and then I can maybe kill it with Death Touch or a big creature. No, it is never going to be swinging in at you. You're just going to die to the billions of 1/1s it creates.
Right. So then the question is, how are they getting all these 1/1s? What is so hard to interact with? Why is it so annoying? They are just going to stack up ETBs, mana rocks, and every time they stack up a creature or an artifact that enters and does something, they're going to get that every single turn, sometimes multiple times. As you know, they might flicker it. We'll look at like a Circuit Member. It's a 3-mana 2/3. When it enters, you gain 2, and when it leaves, you draw a card. Both of those are happening every turn. Keep the cards flowing.
It's not like this is a auto included into every deck, but it is just so good in this one. You're going to keep your life total up, so if they get in a couple early hits, you're going to be able to recover from that. Card draw is so hard to find in white, but this is really going to be able to keep your hand full and it's going to stay safe to you. Enters and leaves, that is so open-ended. Whether they are able to kill it or whether you're just flickering it, you're going to get those triggers.
Yeah, I have found that it is very difficult to stop Abdel once he gets going. And one of those reasons is things like Prize Statue. 2-mana artifact, when it enters or dies, you get a treasure token. That means every time you enter into one of these loops, you get treasures, sometimes multiples. And that means that even if you can manage to kill the Abdel Adrian, which is theoretically your problem, they can recast it and just start this loop all over again, getting all of those 1/1s, and you're kind of just left scratching your head. There's not a lot of ways to come at this deck. You have to come at it from a different angle, like non-combat damage or some sort of board wipe at a crucial moment, maybe one-sided. You have to get crafty with this. And I think you're going to honestly have to work with other people at the table to take out this deck.
Like Skyclave Apparition, 1 white for a 2/2. When it enters, you exile up to 1 target non-land, non-token permanent you don't control with mana value 4 or less. When it leaves, they create an XX, where X is the mana value of the exiled card. Hitting anything that's not a land and not a token just opens it up to such a wide variety of things. And when you flicker this over and over, it's not just even going to be the best things at a certain point. It's just going to be, when you have so many flicker triggers, it's just going to be mowing down everything on the board that you can.
They're not going to have anything. That's 90% of what I have that's valuable, costs 4 or less, and is non-token. And you would think the one downside of doing this over and over, is that they stack up tokens that they can use against you. But it doesn't matter when you just have 78 1/1s on defense. It's like Scoot Swarm and, I don't know, like Hostage Taker had a baby or something. I don't like it.
Yeah, with these like 2/2s, 3/3s, 4/4s, yeah. Every single time you flicker, though, you're going to be getting a 1/1 back. And then it's like, okay, well, I can chump with this. Or I'll have so many more 1/1s that I can just block and actually kill all of your tokens, too.
Right, and if you let too many of those 1/1 stack up, I didn't put them on here, but any number of Anthems can finish the game. This deck has no shortage of ways to end the game. One of them potentially could be Preston the Vanisher. What does he do?
Preston's a 3 and a white for a 2/5. Whenever another non-token creature you control enters, if it wasn't cast, like everything you're going to do flickering in this deck, create a token that's a copy of it, except for it's a 0/1 white illusion. Pay 1 in white and sack 5 illusions, you can exile target non-land permanent. Having those extra ETBs that you have and then also removal on a stick with Preston, that's so good.
Yeah, and now it's just even more tokens. And one thing I've seen Abdel do is he can still exile the tokens that he makes from other, leaving and entering stuff. So if your tokens are tapped for some reason, just might as well exile them. You just get new ones that are untapped. A lot going on. None of it's good for your opponents. One of the non-land permanents that I've found to be the most frustrating to play against because it almost feels hopeless. Coveted Jewel. When it enters, you draw 3 cards. It's 6 mana and it makes 3. Whenever one or more creatures hit you and aren't blocked, that player can steal the Coveted Jewel, but that's just...
Whatever.
I'm sorry, that's just not the world we live in. The world we live in is I have 25 1/1s on defense, and I'm going to flicker this thing, and most of the time it's going to be under Abdel anyway, so they can't really hit me because it's not in play. It's just going to be tied to Abdel the next time I flicker him. Yeah, this making 3 mana is almost one of the scariest parts. Drawing 3 obviously is nice, but Gilded Lotus, also scary. In this deck, it lets you go, pay 3 mana, float it, flicker, whatever, float it, but then you can activate abilities and stuff and just keep getting cards and keep getting more Abdel Adrians, and it just all fuels itself.
Coveted Jewel is one of those cards that seems like a precon card because it's like, it's so much mana, and then they can
It's like
take
the Monarch.
it, and blah, blah, blah. But it's so good in this deck because it's not if you cast it, it's just if it enters. So when you flicker it, and you get your 3 mana, and you get your 3 cards, and then you do it again, and it all happened on the same turn.
This is what we mean by commanders you don't see coming, because, they go Abdel Adrian into Coveted Jewel, and the newbie is like, oh, wow, that's pretty fun.
Maybe
and
I'll get it one
the veteran
day.
is like, please, dear God. It's on site with Coveted Jewel. Next is another avenue for this deck, and another reason that you just can't let them breathe. Fiend Hunter is 1 white for a 1/3. When it enters, you can exile another target creature, and when it leaves, that creature returns to the battlefield. Abdel Adrian, I personally knew him from his infamous combos with Animate Dead and Necromancy, because that creates infinite 1/1s and infinite enters the battlefields of other creatures you control because they sort of loop with each other. Very, very good 2-card combo. Not available in Mono White, so I thought I was safe, but what Mono White has is the critical mass of Fiend Hunter and Oblivion Ring permanents that can sort of, once you have 3 of them, create infinite leaves of battlefields with Abdel Adrian, and now it's just another thing you have to keep track of. Do they have Oblivion Ring and Fiend Hunter in play along with Abdel? Great, you're in some serious trouble because they will start exiling each other and making infinite things.
And when we talk about things that are like, oh, great, like the newbie's like, oh, that's awesome, and the veteran's like, ugh, that's awful. O-Ring is another one of those because we always say don't play those. Those aren't good in Commander. They're good in 1v1 if you're drafting it or whatever, but in Commander, that's not going to be good because so many people can remove it. But in this deck, it's going to be very good, and you're going to have to take it out as quickly as possible.
Yeah, this deck, I was surprised. It's not very often that a deck comes up that is a true nightmare for me to deal with, and I just get a headache. It's a very strong deck, and for very cheap. None of those cards that make the deck tick are worth more than like 50 cents. So pretty sweet one. Love you, Abdel Adrian. You're always a problem. Next, we're going to move to Vadric, Astral Archmage, the absolute beatdown of the century if you give him time to breathe. 1 red, blue for a 1/2. If it's neither day nor night, it becomes day as Vadric enters. Instant and sorcery spells you cast cost X less to cast, where X is his power. Whenever day becomes night or night becomes day, put a +1/+1 counter on Vadric. This card doesn't look like the most annoying thing you've ever seen, but if you leave it alone, and this is their commander, I think there's a really good chance you just lose the game. Even just like they play Vadric on turn 3 and pass. If you let them go to turn 4, you might just be dead.
Vadric is a card that is often found in Spellslinger decks, and it is one of the scariest cards in the 99, but have it at the helm of your deck and being able to have it every single time on turn 3 gets so terrifying so quickly. And it's not just because you have to track night and day at that point. It's because he's going to get so big and all of your spells are going to be costing that much less, and then they're going to basically be free and you're going to be dead.
Yeah, we'll start with a simple one. We'll start with Wild Ride. It's red for a sorcery. Target creature gets +3/+0 and gains haste until end of turn. And you can harmonize it, which is a fancy flashback, for 4 and a red. Vadric's 3 mana. You play Wild Ride. Now he's a 4/2. You spent 1 mana and he's now a 4/2. Your instant sorceries for that turn cost 4 less to play, and this one has flashback or harmonize, so you can just pay another red and then tap him, and now he's 7, and now all of your spells are 7 less. I think we're going to get into what kind of X spell shenanigans you're going to see, but I do think, like you said, this is a scary card in 99, but when it's your commander, it means you can crack or stack your deck full of a critical mass of X spells and payoffs for always having a question mark discount. Whatever that is, that's the number of mana that goes into your X spells, and they are ridiculous, the effects you get.
I love this card in here. It's Levon, Cultist of Tiamat. 2 and a red for a 1/3. When we cast a non-creature spell, target creature, Vadrik, is going to get +X/+O until end of turn, where X is that spell's mana value. You want to be churning through all of these spells that have gigantic mana values because you want to make them cheaper anyways, but all of these giant mana spells are going to make Vadrik that much bigger for that turn, which is going to make all those X spells cheaper too. So if you turn into like, something that says card draw, the target player draws X, and then you make it bigger, and then you could turn it into like a burn spell that makes it that much bigger.
Yeah, like if you spend 7 mana on an X spell, like you said, now cool, that's 7 more power that gets put in as reduction for your burn spell that deals 7 more damage. It's so sick. I love also, differentiating, like we said with Indoraptor. It's cool to have the flame rifts, the one-off bursts of damage, but this is like an onboard, continuous, even if Vadrik dies, you can play this, it'll stick around. They have to answer this too. So I like differentiating that a little bit. I also do love me some Haze of Rage. 1 and a red sorcery, buyback for 2 mana. Creatures you control get +1/+0 until end of turn, and it has Storm. So kind of what we want to be doing with Vadrik, but the thing that didn't stick out to me until I, researched this exact ruling is, can buyback cost be reduced by Vadrik? Yup.
Yes.
Additional costs like that can be reduced. So for just a single red, as long as this spell costs 3 less, you could pay a red to give Vadrik that much more bonus and trigger Storm again and put this back in your hand. So it's just completely stupid. If you have something like Stormkill and Artist, congratulations, you go infinite.
Haze of Rage doesn't look that scary just on its face because this isn't a beatdown deck. This usually isn't going to be like a token type like Balmor, but making Vadrik's power so gigantic is going to make your spells just be that much more explosive. And then there's things like Frantic Search, 2 and a blue for an instant, draw 2, discard 2, untap up to 3 lands. If he's 2 power, which is just putting 1/1/1 counter on him or making his power 1 more than normal, it's just going to be blue, draw 2, discard 2, and untap up to 3 lands. That is just profiting mana at that point.
This is a great early play, I think. You have to get your Vadrik ball rolling somehow, and this is a great way to have a little bit more mana. It's a functional ritual. There's plenty of other rituals like your Mana Geysers and your Rite of Flames that you're probably going to play. Frantic Search is a great one to get you off the ground because when you win with Vadrik, you're only going to need like 4 mana.
Yeah.
Like you can play Vadrik on turn 3. Maybe you're holding up a counterspell or something, but whatever. But just for the sake of this, untapping on turn 4 with 4 lands, you can win. And part of it is through stuff like Frantic Search, where you're like, oh, okay, well, I spent 3-4 to get my initial engine rolling, and now he's got 6 power. So now I'll just untap my lands, and then I'll play 3 more X spells and win.
If you want to have a more mid-range game, I think Wizards of the Day is going to be really fun. 3 and a blue for a 3/3. Instants and sorcery spells you cost 1 less to cast, and you can cast sorcery spells as though they had flash. This is going to make all of your spells cheaper because each copy is going to reduce it by 1. And if it sticks around, you can give all of your sorcery spells flash. So whether you want to use it for your reduction in the moment of your combat, or if you want to just play the longer game and then save some sorcery spells and then just fire them off on people's end steps and that sort, you have flexibility with this card.
Yeah, because you can take the 1 reduction at their end step or the 3 reduction in combat, and it's kind of nice to have a little bit of like differentiation, right? Like Vadrik, we talked about all the cards today pretty much being like must answer commanders. Vadrik's the most. It's way more than the rest. That's the linchpin of their deck. You can't win if it's out. You're going to get beat down so fast you won't even know what happened. So having a couple backups, this can do a little bit Vadrik impression. Nice to have. Now we got to talk about some of those X spells, and you can really pick any ones you want, like Earthquake. Just fire it off as long as you're at the most life you win. I like Pull from Tomorrow, X blue instant, draw X, then discard 1. You always ever discard 1. So, you got Vadrik at 10 power. Tap blue, draw 10, discard 1, and that's how you win games, because then you find rituals and you cast more stuff.
Or if you want to go the burn route, Comet Storm, X red for and also multi-kicker 1. Choose any target, then choose another target for each time the spell is kicked, and it deals X damage to each of them. That's just going to be gigantic. You're going to be like nuking everyone in the face with all this damage because you're not going to actually be paying for it with mana. We don't do that with this deck.
Nope, red.
You're just going to be killing everyone with it.
And multi-kicker also reduced with Vadrik's reduction. So just what an absolute glass cannon it really is, but a part of part of what's annoying about it is you're going to end up facing down Force of Wills and deflecting swats too. Because I know that my commander's a glass cannon, so get wrecked, I guess.
The next commander is in a strategy that I would never have guessed for its color pie. It's Bernard, Ginger Sculptor. There we go. 1 blue, green, white for a 3/3. Each creature you control that's a food or golem gets +2/+2 and has trample. When another non-token creature you control dies, you can exile it. If you do, you make a copy, but it's a 1/1, and it's also a food, so you can sack it and gain 3 life if you pay 2 mana into it. I never would have guessed that this is an Aristocrats deck. Usually Aristocrats is in like the black or black-white.
The other 2 colors,
Yeah.
red, black.
Yeah, not ban. And so when you sack all of these things, they're going to be coming back as these gigantic food golems.
Trample, too.
With trample, and they're going to get extra stats, and there are so many other things in these colors that can also buff artifacts, so they're going to be gigantic. You're going to be able to get double ETBs, triple ETBs, depending on what you choose, and then they're going to swing in for a ton of damage. I feel like this does so much.
Like they also come back as tokens, and they also come back as artifacts, and there's other stuff going on. I never would have expected this cute, like...
Cookie Man.
This cookie man who's just trying to bake some stuff to his heart's content. He's going to hurt me. He's going to hurt me really bad. You see stuff like Sakura Tribe-Elder in here. It's 1 and a green, 1/1, sack it. Go find a basic. I mean, that's basically Nitpicking Nerd's Hall of Fame at this point. You know what that does. But just gets a second use with Bernard. You can either ramp into Bernard on turn 3 with Sakura Tribe-Elder, or if you draw it ever again late, cool, you get a basic, but you also get either another basic or triggering artifacts. Triggering leaves the battlefield, enters the battlefield, sacrifice it to go do something else, like crack it to gain 3 if you want. Oh man, it's just really annoying.
A special one in here is Wing Splicer, 3 and a blue for a 1/1. When it enters, you create a 3/3 golem, and golem creatures you control have flying. Giving all of your token stuff evasion is going to be very, very important.
Yeah.
Because not only are they going to be big now with trample, they're also going to fly in. And if this dies, you're going to create another 3/3 golem too. So that's going to be 5 power every single time that this thing flickers and enters.
Right, yeah. This could be, it makes a functional 5/5, and then it dies with you when you sack it, and it makes another 5/5, and they all have flying and trample. Like, that's a lot of stats on this random throwaway uncommon. I think when you start going like, I've never seen this card before, it seems pretty bad in most scenarios, and then there's a commander that makes it ridiculous, that's like a problem commander.
I love the niche little cards. When we try and make these, when I try and like submit cards, I'm always like, which ones am I only seeing in these decks?
What do you have to read when they play it? And Wing Splicer is one of them. The card you're not going to have to read, because we talk about it all the time, is Nesting Dovehawk, 3 and a white, 2/2 flyer. At the beginning of combat on your turn, populate every turn, and then tokens make it even bigger. This thing, not only with Brennard, if you sack Dovehawk, can it start populating itself to then next turn make more and more and more and more, all of which are golems and food and +2/+2. But even if you just have one really sweet thing that you killed, like a Wing Splicer token, that's a golem, populate it every turn. It's just out of hand. It's just completely out of hand. And we're barely doing anything. We're playing Brennard, a sack outlet, a dumb guy, and a nesting dovehawk.
And it's going to be really big too. If you make multiple nesting dovehawks, not only are you going to be getting those populates every single turn, but these are going to be getting more and more counters on them too.
And they have trample?
Yeah, they're going to have trample. They're going to be even bigger if you make the copies of them, and that you can copy itself if you make it into a copy. So you populate it into itself, and then more and more and more, and they're going to get even bigger from that. I think Bernard is like very scary.
He's so scary, and he's just in an unpredictable way. I just wouldn't have guessed. We're also going to play Solitude in here.
Yeah, it's a funny one.
You don't need any excuses to play Solitude in almost any white deck, but it's 3 white for a 3/2 flash lifelink. When it enters, you Swords to Plowshare a creature, they gain life equal to its power, and then it evokes for free, but you have to exile a white card from your hand. But the evoke means it dies right away. So normally it's like, oh, I'll take a 2 for 1. I have to get this thing off the field. It's worth the tempo loss. Nope, you get your card back. It's another Solitude, and it's a 5/4 lifelinker.
I think that is so funny. I think that is just such a funny and synergistic play to be making with this deck, and then you just get 2 creatures nuked too.
Yeah, you take out the 2 best creatures in play, and you pocket a 5/4 lifelink. It's so silly. I also want to use Ashnod's Altar to sack creatures to make 2 mana. This is going to make this deck almost a little bit of an Aristocrats combo thing. You're going to be making these tokens, sure, and that's scary. But now as the opponent, I'm going to be asking, okay, wait, how many creatures does this represent? Okay, this makes 2 when it enters, and it has a body. You're going to sack it to make 2 more, and then all 4 of those can go. That's 10 mana, and this is an artifact deck, it pays off artifacts pretty well. So how are you going to use that 10 colorless mana? Am I going to get another turn? Do I have to kill Brennard right now? Do I have to kill Ashnod's Altar? I don't know. This deck is weird.
I also love the next one, Inspiring Statuary, 3 mana for an artifact. Non-artifact creatures you cast have improvise. There aren't going to be a lot of artifacts in this deck. This is a creature-heavy deck, and you are going to be playing very few artifacts in it, which means that most of your spells are going to have improvise, but all of the spells, all of the tokens that Bernard makes are artifacts, so you can use them to cast all of your other spells too. So it's just going to chain into one another all of this value.
It's weird that this can be an artifact deck without a lot of artifacts in it. Once you get your game plan enacted, that's when you're going to have 25 artifacts in play, and that's kind of perfect for the statuary. That's kind of exactly where you want to be. There's other stuff in this deck too that we can't even touch on necessarily, but like when you start throwing in Prayer Took into the mix, and now you can sack your creatures that are foods to draw a card. Like there's a lot of things that get really weird, especially if you start making non-legendary tokens that are Bernards, and you start cloning those. God forbid, I don't know what. I don't want to keep track of that board state. But...
And then you're going to be doing token doublers too, like Mondrag Glory Dominus, 2 white for a 4/4. If you make 1 or more tokens, you make twice that many instead, and you can sack artifacts and / or creatures to put indestructible counters on him. So he's never going to die. You can sack anything that you make to make him indestructible, and you're going to have twice the amount of ETBs and just 5/5 or whatever beaters in the air that are going to be swinging for a ton of damage.
And if they do manage to kill it, it just comes back as a golem, and it's a 6/6. It's probably hard to double it because it is legendary, but it just has a second life. One of the other things that Bernard, I think, likes to do is if they're falling behind, they will set up their board, and they'll just wipe the board. And then everything they have, since they haven't proactively sacked it yet, just comes back, and it's a one-sided wipe. And they'll just take the time to replay Bernard later and give the +2/+2 back and smack everybody for a bunch of damage. So Bernard, this kindly old man, is going to slap you if you're not ready for him.
I feel like either winning or losing, it is very easy for this deck to recover and just get way more value and outpace a lot of other decks that I see out there.
It's like it has all that value of like a Bant Blink deck, but it also has a lot of the Rakdos sack stuff.
Yeah.
And it's got a lot of the, I don't know, Prayer Took shenanigan food things. Nuka-Cola maybe is in here somewhere, and it just can punch you with trample.
Yeah,
so there's a lot
this
going
is
on.
A very scary deck.
Yeah, if you want to know maybe one of the problems with your decks that you've had come up, if your decks are losing, this might help you win more games.